Hello, everybody, and welcome to every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie ranked. So, obviously, in this video, I will be ranking all of the Marvel movies, and you know, you guys don't have to agree with my opinions. They're just my opinions. They don't have to be your opinions, and this is just how I feel about most of the Marvel movies. So, let's just get right into it. Coming in last place is The Incredible Hulk. I have not been silent about this movie with my family and friends about how much I actually hate it. It really is just that bad. I mean, it's a movie so bad that Marvel just abandoned the idea instantly. You know, and apparently I cannot confirm this, but apparently like the actor Edward Norton just absolutely hated Kevin Feige. Like, did not want anything to do with him. And I just think this movie just is bad. Bad acting, a bad third act. Like, just everything went wrong with this movie. It's just very bad. Coming in at number 29 is Marvel's The Eternals. So, The Eternals is a movie where I think the actual idea of it is good, but the execution was just so bad. I mean, it seems like this could have been a candidate for a Disney Plus 6-episode TV show rather than a 2.5-hour movie where you can't even get to know the main characters. It was kind of weird. It was a very ambitious movie where it just did not work. I mean, the visual effects are fire. They're pretty good, but, the actual story itself really sucks. Coming in at number 28, Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World is, Marvel at its most mediocre. It has good actors. It has good special effects. It has a good idea. But it just did not work. The most memorable thing about the villain Malekith is that he's so forgettable. This villain just has absolutely nothing to do with anything, and really this is the movie where I was just I think this is the only Marvel movie where I can actually say I was bored with. The Incredible Hulk I'm frustrated with, and The Eternals entertained me at points. But this movie is just so bland and boring. It's just, the villain is unmemorable. Just the movie itself is unmemorable. Number 27, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I do not like the Ant-Man franchise. And this movie really did it for me. I mean, this movie was much like Thor: The Dark World. It's Marvel at its most mediocre. It is a very silly movie, but it's not a memorable movie. The villain is I don't even remember her name. It was the ghost lady, and then you also had Ant-Man himself. I'm not an Ant-Man fan, but Ant-Man himself and the Wasp, I'm what exactly is this movie trying to go for? Are we trying to defeat the bad guy? Are you trying to tell a story about how he was not supposed to be defeating the bad guy? It's just not good, and the visual effects in this movie are also not that good. So this movie, I feel, is just unmemorable with an unmemorable villain. I mean, the villain's not even on the poster. And then, just completely bland and forgettable story. Number 26, Captain America: The First Avenger. I know there are some people in the world that like this movie, and I think this movie is enjoyable, but it's an hour and a half of just straight montage. It's montage the movie over here. I feel the villain himself, we don't really know what he's planning to do until the last 20 minutes of the movie, and then he's just defeated. It's kind of boring. And I don't think the director knew the direction he wanted to go with this movie, and he just ended up going in multiple directions of this movie. And again, it's yet another movie that I feel is Marvel at its most mediocre. It has good acting, it has decent special effects, but the villain is bland as fuck, and, just nothing works. I mean, I guess there's some stuff that worked. Like I said, this movie is enjoyable as is, but for a Marvel movie, it is very low tier. Coming in at number 25, the original Ant-Man. Just too low stakes. Like, this movie is just so low stakes. Has almost absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe until you get up to Avengers Endgame. And it's just, yet another villain that's just, like, very bland. And it's, like, your generic heist story about a person who wants to be better but then has to continue doing, heists. Like, it's not a movie we have not seen before. Like, Ant-Man was just so meh. Number 24, the original Thor movie. This movie is pretty enjoyable. But yet again, it's another Marvel movie that I feel like is kind of bland. Like, the acting is spot on, the visual effects are spot on, the villain, Loki, is amazing. But the story in this movie is like, it's just like so predictable and typical. But, again, a very enjoyable and watchable movie. It's not like The Incredible Hulk, where it's just completely unwatchable. This movie is watchable and it's pretty enjoyable. Going in at number 23, Iron Man 3. I was actually a little bit surprised to put this movie so low on the list, because there's actually a lot of stuff in this movie that I think works just fine. But there's a lot of things in this movie that doesn't work. For starters, the Mandarin. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Mandarin twist, like, lit the internet on fire when this movie came out. Me personally, I don't care for the twist. The thing that I care about is that the Mandarin was, like, actually I just saw this movie, like, 3 days ago, and I can't even remember the villain's name. But it was actually, like, that guy that wants to, like, jumpstart, like, the evolution of the brain or something. And I'm like, I think if the Mandarin was actually, like, an Asian actor, I think it would have been fine. But the twist just did not really work. Like, it was too ambitious and too smart for its own good. They should not have done the twist. I didn't care for the twist. Like, it didn't affect the movie, but I feel like it didn't affect the movie to me, but I feel like it could have been better if they just, kept the Mandarin as is. Or if they took the Mandarin out of the movie. Like, they did not have to have the Mandarin in the movie. But it's a pretty enjoyable movie. Overall, the action is spot on. The acting is spot on. The visual effects are pretty good. It's good. Number 22, Spider-Man Homecoming. Boring, low stakes, but it is a Spider-Man movie, and I have probably the biggest nostalgia for Spider-Man. This movie could easily, in my opinion, be in the bottom 5 because of just how low stakes it is. It's like Ant-Man over here. Like, I don't think if anything had changed in this movie, it would have changed anything in the MCU. I really don't think anything would have changed. Like, you could have told MJ that you're Spider-Man in movie 1, and it would not have changed anything in the MCU. So, like, this is just a movie where it's just yet another chapter in the MCU. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think the movie, as is, works just fine. But again, it's kind of boring. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes of nothing happening. The villain, the Vulture, he's also just, like, yet another Marvel villain that's just kind of like, eh. But it's more than watchable. But I do have to say, when it comes to Spider-Man movies, Homecoming is the worst one, to be honest, in my opinion. But it's good. Coming in at number 21, Black Widow. Yes, you heard that right. Black Widow is actually, like, technically in my bottom 10, but to be fair here, we're in good Marvel movie territory, so it doesn't really matter. I liked it. It's a very good spy movie. I mean, sure, I think it would have been better if it had been a Phase 3 movie and released, in 2018 or 2017. But Florence Pugh is amazing in the role. Scarlett Johansson has always been amazing as Black Widow, but come on, Yelena. Who does not love Yelena? But I think this movie is very good as is. The third act is very wobbly, but I think the actual story in this movie was very good. The special effects are also kind of wobbly, but it is a bit silly. But for a Marvel movie, this movie is pretty good. It has a good villain, a good story, and some very great casting here. Coming in at number 20, Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie was enjoyable, but I can totally understand the criticisms that people have for this movie. Is it very silly? Maybe way too silly? Yes, absolutely. But I do want to say that I think the beginning of this movie and the ending of this movie were spot on. But the middle, the actual second act, the middle story of going to point A to point B is very forgettable. Wow, this is a movie where you might forget what happens when you walk out of the theater. I saw this movie twice. I liked it when I saw it in the theater, but it wasn't until I watched it on Disney Plus where I was like, whoa, that middle is actually very boring and very slow. But Christian Bale really is good as the villain. And, Thor is Thor. And, to be honest here, it's kind of sad that this is the second best Thor movie. Thor is just not a good Marvel franchise. I wanted to say Thor was a good franchise and I was a fan of Thor. But no, I'm a fan of Thor Ragnarok. I'm not a fan of Thor. The Thor movies. I love Thor as an Avenger. But the Thor movies themselves, they have problems. They really do. This is a franchise with a whole lot of problems. It started out mediocre. In the middle, it was mediocre. The third movie was great. And then the fourth movie ended decently. If the middle was better, this movie could have been easily in the top 15. But no, the middle is just so bad. And obviously, I think Natalie Portman just was handed a very bad script. This was wow. Coming in at number 19, Iron Man 2. I actually liked this movie much better than Iron Man 3, and we're starting to enter great Marvel movie territory. Yes, I am a Marvel fan, so number 19 means it's a great movie. But Iron Man 2, despite all the flack it gets, I recently rewatched it and I had a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of things in this movie that you just simply don't remember are good. Iron Man himself, the whole, a couple of years ago, 2017, I want to say, when I was rewatching all the Marvel movies for, getting ready for Infinity War because I was coming out in 6 months. When I saw Iron Man 2, I was big whoop. Now when I watch Iron Man 2, I start to realize this is truly Tony Stark's movie. This is the Tony Stark movie we always wanted to see. And I think if you don't like Iron Man 2, you just don't like Tony Stark. Coming in at number 18 is Captain Marvel. I am a Captain Marvel fan. I know this movie has its detractors, it has its supporters, and it has its in-the-middlers. I'm a supporter of this movie. I think this movie is actually pretty fun. I mean, sure, the story has problems. I'm not going to say it doesn't. I mean, the fact that the hero herself just is some girl who doesn't remember her memories and, you know, is trying to figure out who she is. It's a story you've seen 100 times, and she was basically a puppet the whole movie, just letting people tell her what to do. But, want to emphasize, this movie has great special effects, great action sequences. I think the acting also is very spot on. It introduces the Skrulls. I think this movie was a very worthy entry for the MCU. Like, the people who hate this movie, I think, are just people who hate Brie Larson. If you take Brie Larson out of the picture and only watch the movie itself, you will realize this movie is actually pretty good. Or at least medium. Like, it's at least a medium movie. I think it's a good movie, but I could see why some people would say it's a medium movie. Like, the only people I think who really hate this movie are the people who don't like Brie Larson. And I don't really care about Brie Larson. I don't hate her, but I don't love her. I'm in the middle about her. But this movie, Captain Marvel, pretty dang good. Number 17, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, it is high on my, I guess in the middle of my list, but high in my list in terms of, like, how much I like it. But it is such a backside from the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, the first Guardians of the Galaxy was, like, lightning in a bottle. And I feel like the second one was more of the same. For the first thing, I think the second one goes way too far in the silly direction instead of the action direction or the emotional direction. I think the third act, kind of wobbly, like I think it went on for like maybe 5 minutes too long, but it's a very fun movie that has great action sequences, very good cast. You know, who doesn't like Chris Pratt at this point? Like, all the roles Chris Pratt is in just instantly makes the movie good. But really, number 17 is not a bad place to be, considering how many people seem to hate this movie for some reason. I think this movie is damn good as it is. I mean, especially in the beginning, and it's just, like, funny as hell. This movie is just, it's just good. Coming in at number 16, Spider-Man Far From Home. This is a movie that I have a lot of fun with. Yes, I get some of the criticisms for it, but to be honest, I just don't care. I think this movie is awesome. Like, the twist in this movie, the villain twist, like, that's a twist done right. Villain twist done right. I mean, sure, you know, in the comics, Mysterio was a villain, but in this movie, he was portrayed as a hero, and then he ended up being the villain. You know, it's something that if you're a comic book fan, you would expect, but if you're just a general moviegoer, like, I'm not a Marvel Comics fan, I'm a Marvel movie fan. So technically, I'm a general moviegoer that loves Marvel movies. So if you're just a general moviegoer, you were caught off guard by that. And also, that amazing end credit sequence. Like, I don't understand how nobody talked about that when it first came out. Like, Peter Parker got his identity revealed, y'all. We have plenty to talk about, but then everybody's just like, eh. But to be honest, this movie is great. It has great action sequences. You know, Jon Favreau really stands out in the role. I really don't have that many problems with it. Even with the whole, like, glasses thing, I don't have that many problems with this movie. I think everything in this movie works. Number 15, the original Iron Man, right in the middle of my list. That's not a bad thing, but the fact that half of the movie is beaten out, I just don't think Iron Man has particularly aged very well. I think if you think Iron Man is a top 10 Marvel movie, you must have loads of nostalgia. Because I recently rewatched this movie, and I was kind of disappointed, I'm going to be honest with you, because it's not what I remembered. The first, 40 minutes of this movie is just very boring. Like, it's basically a movie that is setting up another movie that's going to come in the future, and that's the Avengers. Like, that's all this movie is. And the villain, meh. I think other than Malekith, the villain in this movie, which I don't even remember his name, and I just watched this movie like less than a week ago, and I don't remember the villain's name, is even more forgettable than Malekith in Thor: The Dark World. The only reason I remember Malekith's name is because I just watched Thor: The Dark World like yesterday. But still, this is just a movie where nothing interesting happens, but nothing bad happens. But it is in the top 15 because of nostalgia. Like, it's the movie that started it all, and you have to respect it for that. Coming in at number 14, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This movie was like a roller coaster for me. So, like, before I saw this movie, one of my friends was like, yo, you're gonna love Multiverse of Madness. It, like gets right into the action, and it just doesn't stop the whole movie. And I thought he was exaggerating a little bit, but no, he was not. Literally, right when the movie starts, you start with an action scene, and then the movie just continues and just does not slow down until the very end of the movie. Like, it's just jam-packed with weirdness and craziness and, multiversiness. But, again, I do have to point out, why call this movie Multiverse of Madness when you're only in one Multiverse of Madness? Like, you should just call it, like I would have called it Doctor Strange. I probably just would have called it Doctor Strange and Wanda, to be honest, or Doctor Strange and the Scarlet Witch, because that's what this movie truly was. It was Doctor Strange, or Doctor Strange versus the Scarlet Witch. That's what I would have called it, because that's what this movie was. It was Doctor Strange versus the Scarlet Witch. But really, or you could have just called it Doctor Strange, the House of El, because that is the comic book that this movie is based off. I think the whole Multiverse of Madness title just kind of throws you off, and it makes up a lot of promises. Like, the trailers made a lot of promises that it didn't quite deliver on, but the movie, like I said, it's a roller coaster. Like, you're gonna have a lot of fun, whether, like, this movie has problems, but you're gonna have fun anyways. It's like Jurassic World. Like, it has tons of problems, but you just have a lot of fun watching the movie. It's just a fun roller coaster. Coming in at number 13, Captain America: Civil War. Very important movie, very standout movie. Airport scene. What else do I have to say? I guess I do have to say I side with Iron Man on this one. Like, Bucky literally killed his parents. Like, this is literally a movie that Marvel made to divide audiences, and it worked. Like, most movies that are divisive are accidentally made divisive, like Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I don't think Disney knew that it was going to be divisive, or Batman vs. Superman, which, a movie I personally hate, by the way. I think it's the worst comic book movie ever made, but Batman vs. Superman completely divided audiences. Like, some people hated it, some people loved it. Like, there really was no in between. But this is a movie where everybody loved it, but it was still so divisive in the way of, I'm siding with Captain America or I'm siding with Iron Man. And the fact that Kevin Feige can purposefully make a divisive movie that works is very impressive. And again, I side with Iron Man. Coming in at number 12, Avengers: Age of Ultron. I know, not everybody loves this movie, but I just do. Ultron is a freaking cool villain. It introduces the Scarlet Witch. It has Quicksilver in it. The Avengers themselves is great. The third act is great, and I just genuinely love the movie. Like, I don't care what anybody else says about, oh, this movie has so many flaws, but I think this movie has aged very well. I think when it came out, you could have said, oh yeah, this movie has tons of flaws. But what you did not know when this movie came out was that it was setting up Infinity War. It was setting up Ragnarok. It was setting up, like, all these other movies. So it's just a movie that I think has aged very well. And actually, as time has gone by, I have liked Age of Ultron even more. Like, I honestly don't think this movie really has any problems. I think the people that don't like this movie are just like, it's not as good as The Fist of Avengers, so it's just not a good movie. Or it's like, it's Joss Whedon. Like, some people really hate Joss Whedon, so they're like, oh, it's Joss Whedon's final movie? It's horrible. But I don't think anybody really genuinely hates Age of Ultron. I think they just don't like that it's not as good as the first Avengers movie, which it isn't. No. But it's still an incredible movie. An incredible movie. So, I don't care what anybody else says. Number 11, Thor Ragnarok. Just missing the top 10, by the way. The number 10 movie they barely missed it out. But Thor Ragnarok, I think, was in my top 10 before I made this video. But I think Thor Love and Thunder did enough damage on Ragnarok to push it out of the top 10. It's not bad. It's still a very good movie with a very good villain, and it has, Hulk and the Grandmaster and everything else in it. Like, it's just a very fun movie. But I do want to say that this is the movie that I think started the trend. Well, actually, I don't even know if I want to say that, because I think this is the movie that really kind of started the trend of silly Marvel. Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014 had that, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 had that, but then Thor Ragnarok was very silly, and then Marvel saw how successful that was, and they're like, let's just do that in almost all the movies and make them all very silly and family-friendly, and I don't think it really worked for them. Sure, Thor Ragnarok, the silliness in this movie actually was in its favor, but for a lot of Marvel movies, the amount of silliness that they put in there didn't work. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I don't like because it's so silly. I think Black Widow is hurt because it's so silly. Thor Love and Thunder is hurt because it's so silly. So I think it's just the movie that started a bad trend in Marvel that I'm very glad has hopefully ended. And number 10 is Doctor Strange. I think story-wise, this movie is not as good as Thor Ragnarok, but the visual effects in this movie are so impressive. The acting in this movie is so good. It has a very forgettable villain that I don't remember the name. I'm a Marvel fan, but the fact that I have to be watching a Marvel movie to be like, oh yeah, that was the villain's name. It's impressive just how forgettable some of these Marvel villains are. But Doctor Strange, it's just a very solid film. It's a very great film. Amazing special effects, great acting, mediocre villain, but also a very good story. So all in all, that equals a top 10 Marvel movie. Number 9, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think this is the perfect Captain America movie. I don't think you could have possibly made a better one. It completely flipped around the first Captain America. Whatever they did wrong with the first one, they clearly fixed. And they made it from Montage the movie to it being a very political movie. And I think it really works, because that's what Captain America should be, is a political movie. Even Civil War was a pretty political movie. It was I think this movie, the perfect way to describe it, was a political spy thriller movie. And it has Black Widow in it, of course. Black Widow, I think, really stands out in the role in this movie. And then it also has a couple of twists, like the Nick Fury one, the director one, the old guy. But yeah, I think the villain, to be honest, there really was sure, the villain was Hydra, but I think there was no one villain. I think in this movie, just about, if you weren't Captain America, Sam, or Black Widow, or Nick Fury, you were a villain. And I think that really worked in this movie. It really worked. And by the way, everybody, this is the first movie that the Russo brothers directed. And those who don't know, the Russo brothers were the ones who directed Infinity War and Endgame as well. This was the very first movie that the Russo brothers directed. They made like a couple of short films before this, but this was the first theatrical movie. I mean, I think they might have made a theatrical movie before, but this was their first blockbuster. And they did a hell of a good job. You know, and like I said, they also made Infinity War and Endgame. And then coming in at number 8 is Guardians of the Galaxy, the original one. Like I said in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, this one is just a far better film. Like, sure, it has some of the same aspects, but I think what they did in this movie just could not be matched. I hope Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is good, but this was ultra good. Like, this was like you couldn't... I feel like this is just the true definition of lightning in a bottle. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just a movie that everybody can love. Like, it's a fun movie, has amazing action sequences. I think this was really the movie that introduced Thanos. Like, technically, the Avengers had, an end scene that had Thanos in it, but this one introduced Thanos. And I think everybody just loves this movie because of that. Coming in at number 7 is The Avengers. When this movie came out, one, it was the first movie to open at more than $200 million. But also, more importantly, this is just a very, very well executed movie from a creative and a business perspective. It was literally a movie where 4 years worth of movies just all came together. They're like, we have to fight this one villain. We're all going to the Avengers. And Iron Man teased that. And they're like, it's leading somewhere. Don't worry. And then it led somewhere. And it blew everyone's minds of just how good this movie is. And I think to this day, this Avengers movie, The Avengers, has aged perfectly. You can watch Phase 1 and then watch The Avengers and then watch any other Marvel movie, and this movie is still excellent. The final battle is great. Loki, I feel like, is really good. And when the Avengers all come together, very nostalgic. It's a very good movie. It's just that good. Coming in at number 6, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Wow. When I saw this movie, it blew my mind of how good it was. I thought it was going to be because the trailers, I knew the trailers were good, but they weren't Avengers Endgame good. I was like, that seems like a movie I might want to skip. And then I saw it, and I was like, whoa, that was a ride. This movie is, very good. I think the action here is spot on. This is the Mandarin done right, and they actually brought back the old Mandarin from 2013 Iron Man, and put him in this movie, and they actually did a good job. It actually worked. And Shang-Chi himself is very good. Awkwafina really stands out in her role. This is a movie with a memorable villain. You don't say that all the time. Very good hero, very good acting, perfect casting, I would say. So, it's a good Marvel movie. Coming in at number 5 is Black Panther. What a cultural phenomenon, to be honest. This is, the cultural movie that you really... When it came out, you just had to watch this movie. It was just, if you didn't go see Black Panther in theaters, what were you doing? It was, kind of that kind of movie. Its opening weekend was, over 200 million. It was not, the biggest opening weekend, but it just, had such big staying power and just moved so many people that it was whoa, this is actually pretty good. And I think to this day, Black Panther has aged perfectly. It's still an incredible movie. Chadwick Boseman, rest his soul. I think he very much stands out in this movie. And I think this movie has only gotten better as it has aged. I mean, this movie is it's just so good. Coming in at number 4, Avengers Infinity War. There are Infinity War fans, like people who prefer Infinity War, and there are Endgame fans. I'm an Endgame fan. Infinity War, I think, yes, is it a very good, maybe even perfect Marvel movie? Yes. But, to be honest with you, I think it focuses way too much on Captain America. And like I said in Civil War, I was on Iron Man's team. So like every time I saw Captain America, I was like, oh my god, I hate this guy. I mean, Endgame fixed him, by the way. Endgame totally made Captain America likable again for me. But Infinity War, I feel like Captain America was the same person, but wall-to-wall action, you know, Thanos, what a villain. And the cliffhanger, I remember sitting in the movie theater, and when the snap actually happened, like people in the movie theater like actually gasped. Like nobody could believe that the heroes lost. Like everybody thought, oh my god, Marvel is so formulaic. You know, we all know the hero is gonna win in the end, but then they lost, and like audiences in the movie theater I was watching it in, visibly and audibly like gasped, and like I even kind of cried when Spider-Man disappeared because I was like very emotional one for me, and then like when Black Panther disappeared, it was like, what? He just got here and now he's gone. And yeah. Number 3, Spider-Man No Way Home. Really all I have to say about this movie, it is the perfect Spider-Man movie. Nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. I mean, this movie, it came out just like a year ago. Can you believe that? A year ago at this point? To be honest with you, I think this movie is like almost perfect. It has amazing villains, you know, amazing casting. Like all 3 Spider-Men come together for one fight. Like this movie is just truly fantastic. It has Doctor Strange in there. I know the ending is kind of divisive, but I think the ending is perfect. You know, the fact that the only way to save the world is for everybody to forget Peter Parker, and to me it was kind of emotional. Like, I could feel it. And then the movie ended. Like, this movie was, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, a roller coaster. And it's funny. It has the villains. It has everything. It just has everything you want in not only a Spider-Man movie, but also a Marvel film and a comic book movie. I think even non-Marvel fans, like DC fans, would fall in love with this movie. Coming in at number 2, and I'm actually kind of surprised by this, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Wow. This movie truly blew my mind. Like, I was not ready for how good this movie was. I thought it would be actually a lot worse than the first Black Panther, but I actually think it's a lot better than the first Black Panther. Like, sure, there's no Chadwick Boseman in it, but really? Even without him, and I'm trying to be, like, as respectful as possible, even, like, without him in the movie, I think the movie was perfect. Like, I think if Chadwick Boseman was in the movie, this could be the best Marvel movie ever, maybe even the best comic book movie ever, but is definitely the best solo Marvel movie of all time. And this is a movie, like, I cried, I laughed, this movie really respected Chadwick Boseman. Namor, I think the best. I think even topping Thanos, I think Namor is the best Marvel villain that I've ever seen. Like, he is truly out there, truly fantastic. in another Marvel movie that just was spot on with the casting. I mean, this movie had like some comedy, but it didn't really go that far out. It was just, I feel like this movie was kind of a drama, and it works. It's like a superhero movie that has a lot of drama, a lot of political stuff as well, like shockingly a lot of political stuff. And it was a very sophisticated Marvel movie. Like, it's not something that kids would really love. But this was a great movie experience as well. And that end scene, bro, was amazing. But again, I cried, I laughed, I just had a grand old time with this movie. Coming in at number one, probably the surprise of no one, is Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame, I think, is the perfect Marvel movie. You know, Avengers Endgame and Wakanda Forever. And Spider-Man No Way Home. Those are the three I love the most. I think all three of those are all perfect Marvel movies. They're basically tied at the top. Avengers Endgame wins out in the end. Why? Because it's an Avengers movie. Also why? Because it has Thanos in it. Also why? Iron Man dies. Also why? It has an hour of action in it. This movie, like I said, I think it is the perfect Marvel movie. I really don't think they could have made a better Avengers movie. And there are some people who are like, it's 3 hours long. But it worked. And this is probably the movie where I have the most memorable movie-going experience ever. For more than one reason. First of all, when movie tickets went on sale, like in March, I think, or like around the Super Bowl, I told my dad, I was like, yo, we need to get tickets for this because they're going to be sold out like day one. And he goes, no, let's just wait until Sunday. Sundays usually have smaller crowds, so we'll probably not have sold out theaters. Well, Sunday, April 28th, we went over there, and every single showing was sold out, except for the 5:31, I think it was in an IMAX. But there was like only 10 seats available left. We had to get our tickets online. There was like 5 of us. Good thing there was 5 seats in a row. It was like right in the middle of the movie theater, by the way. And then as the movie was going along, I was like, whoa, I'm having an amazing time with this. Like, this movie's sad, this movie has comedy, this movie has action. But then as you get into the last hour of it, that's when it gets really good. You know, when you hear Sam saying, on your left, wow. Like, and then you see, like, the portals open and everybody comes through. You know, the Marvel theme plays. Everybody I'm not kidding. When Spider-Man went through the portal, everybody started clapping and cheering. Like, it was like the most amazing thing ever. And then when Captain America picks up the hammer and Thor says, I knew it, everybody just laughed. Like, I think this Marvel movie, 1, because of that theater experience, and 2, because of how damn good this movie is. It's aged very well. Is the best Marvel movie. And that's all I have for you guys. I do have, other videos planned. One of them is kind of a passion project. I am going to rank other Marvel movies. Or not Marvel movies, just other movie franchises. I'm planning to do, like, DC at some point. I'm probably going to do, like, Jurassic Park, Star Wars, Pirates of the Caribbean. Those are, like, some franchises I'm probably going to be working on pretty soon. But I hope you guys liked the video, and goodbye.